My name is Nick Laidlaw. I'm a holistic exercise and lifestyle coach from Sydney's Northern Beaches. I've created a video platform because I'd love to reach as many people as possible with these simple messages of health. I've also interviewed a host of individuals from our community. In their lives and in their own way, they've all helped to shape me be a better person. So I hope that they inspire you in some way too. Okay, so we're on our way now to interview Gary Gorrow. He's a meditation teacher. He taught me how to meditate about 4 or 5 years ago, and he's an absolute legend. So I'm psyched to hear his thoughts on life in general. Obviously we'll speak about some meditation and see what comes of it. Gaz, thanks for coming to have a chat with me.
Awesome, mate. So good to see you.
Yeah, you too, man. So I've given people a rough introduction of who you are as a person and some things of what you do, but most people around the community know you as a meditation teacher. Among being a meditation teacher, what are some other things that you do?
That's a very good question. I mean, I think what I do is quite multifaceted and dynamic. I'm interested in helping people grow and self-realize. And I guess the major tool that I impart to others is a technique of meditation. And for me that really played a critical role in my own personal sort of growth and evolution. But I've also come to appreciate that there are so many other things that we can utilize for growth, whether it be understanding Ayurveda and the science of well-being and all that that's connected to in terms of lifestyle, diet, exercise, breathing techniques, herbs, and really, you know, the philosophy is something which I'm just deeply in love with. You know, how we can organize our internal software to just generate a better life experience, you know, and how we can interpret things in a way which creates elevation, or conversely interpret life in a way which sort of brings us grief and suffering. So I'm always interested in the human mind and I guess how the mind functions and works and human perception. So I think into my work I integrate Ayurveda, of course, that science of healing. Also always looking at just practical things like lifestyle, but mostly how we create an inner shift. And there's so many ways and means to do that. And a lot of the time I'm working with people outside of my formal meditation training, which is just purely intuitive.
More into a mentoring role.
And often, you know, something comes in that just needs to unfold in that session, and I kind of hold space for that, I guess.
What do you put that down to when you are working in the context of mentoring or facilitating some inner shift in somebody? When knowledge just kind of appears to you like that, or you know, you're opening space like that for people? In shamanism they call it becoming the hollow reed, where, you know, music can just play through you, or knowledge can just flow through you because you're not obstructing it. In the Vedic tradition we call it like pure cognition. So you're just awake to the need of the moment, and you're not offering any preconceived ideas or a set strategy, you're just being available, and then information can be realized and shared. So I think it's just being awake enough to be available to that underlying order, you know, that underlying intelligence to use you as a vehicle to share. And everyone has that capacity, but often people are just distracted in one way or another. I was about to say it could be likened to a lot broader spectrum of life, whether you are here to serve people or whether you're just trying to live and succeed and find happiness yourself. A lot comes down to maybe getting out of the way a little bit, do you think? You know, I think like they're all paths are ultimately one, whether we think we're here to live a life of service or whether we're here to just fulfill our own purpose and goals and be happy. I don't see separation. I think everyone in some way is serving. If you're serving your individuality, you're also serving the collective. Some people are here to serve the collective, so we do it in different ways, but ultimately, you know, everyone's here to grow and uphold the fabric of society, I think, and we all do that in some way. But I believe that there's this life force that lives through everyone and expresses itself through everyone. That's all. And
Nietzsche, he said something really beautiful once. He said, we live under the assumption that we think when it's more likely that we're being thought. So when you relate that to life and living, you know, we kind of think, oh, I'm living. Well, actually, we're being lived. You know, there's this beautiful, sacred intelligence which is living through us, lives and breathes through us. And I think we just need to purify ourselves so we can become the fullest expression of that.
And what are some ways of purifying ourselves to be available to that kind of experience?
Well, the very obvious level is like on the level of physical body, getting out toxicity and making sure just the machinery is fully operational.
Yeah.
But beyond that, it's really what we call, you know, the vasana, the mental conditioning. It's purifying that, really stopping the mind from functioning and operating in a way which is negating the flow of pure intelligence and pure consciousness and pure love. So I think so much, you know, of human suffering and limitation is just really self-generated or held in place by inherited societal conditioning or generational conditioning. So the most important way to purify is to purify the mind, you know. And I love the word that the idea of annihilating limitation, just completely doing away with it. So I guess that's the journey I'm on, you know, eliminating my own limitations and supporting people in their process.
Sure.
But just kind of getting out of the way.
Has it been a big journey for you to eliminate that?
Yeah, and I don't kind of think I've completed my work, you know. I kind of think I'll be doing this work until the day I drop my body, whenever that is. So I think it's just a constant process of improving oneself and realizing one's full potential. And as long as we're making progress, like, that's beautiful. I think when we stagnate, we suffer, and I think suffering is the message for someone to really reassess where they're at and what they're doing and their trajectory, so they can get back on the path of personal growth and realization. So yeah, my personal journey, it's continuing. You know, I definitely went from a place of ignorance to a place of, you know, greater awareness now. Yeah. And it's still going.
That's beautiful. I think a lot of the making of a good teacher, any good teacher like yourself that I've experienced, is often the first to admit that they're, you know, evolving, and there's no such thing as a perfect. You know, we are perfect as we are, but striving for something more than that isn't quite where the goal is.
Yeah. And I think, you know, can someone ever say they've truly arrived? And I think there are people that can, but I'm not going to say I have yet, you know, because I'd be lying.
Half of Avalon would disagree, but or maybe most of Avalon. But
I guess your standards just keep getting raised as well, your personal standard. So I guess in the eyes of others, you know, maybe I've achieved something which is, you know, inspirational. But to myself, I realise, you know, I still got so far to go, and I guess that distance is just being more fully awake to the present. You know, it's not. There's no time really. It's just. You know, tapping deeper into oneself, and you know, that's my daily practice. Just tapping more deeper into that sacred that I know exists within me. And it's easy in our society to kind of get pulled away from that or led away from that, and having family to take care of and mortgages and all those sorts of things. So I guess I'm becoming more and more adept at inhabiting that space. And you know, I can lose it, but I find it, I can definitely come back to it quicker and faster and remain there for longer.
Yeah. Do you ever find it, or have you in the past found it hard to have that kindness towards yourself when you are on this journey of, you know, getting to know yourself more and more? That self-forgiveness, and then I suppose compassion and love for yourself?
Yeah, I definitely had to learn that. Like learning self-love. That was such a foreign concept to me, and one I only learned quite recently. And I think what I've come to appreciate is just the layers of self. And my focus has been on the inner self, really awakening to the essence of what I am, rather than to the package of what I am, which is this, you know, 5 foot tall and how many kilos and however many earth years and whatnot. That's kind of been a secondary thing for me. Like, it's always been about realizing and awakening the inner. But also at the same time appreciating that you have this external form and it is a vehicle, and celebrating that for whatever it is, you know.
Yeah.
whatever degree of wit and wisdom and insight and all your foibles, celebrating all your quirks and everything, realising they're part of the package.
And learning to love them.
Yeah.
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 You said it, you summed it up really beautifully once, where I asked you about this because I think it's something that a lot of us, me myself included, we come across this subject all the time of self-love. And you said to me, you know, Nick, every day I'm falling in love with myself. I'm learning to fall in love with myself.
Yeah.
And I say that to myself all the time, and just because it's so poignant. And then, yeah, I think it's really cool.
Yeah, and I think that's the main fault that I notice people carry, is they beat themselves up and they're never good enough, and no matter what they create, they don't celebrate it. They kind of think, oh, I can do better, but you know, with that attitude you definitely achieve, but you know, you never find peace in it. So I think first and foremost, people just have to love the skin they're in and celebrate whatever they achieve, whether it's they can build a sandcastle, awesome, I built a sandcastle, or you can be the CEO of a huge corporation, wonderful.
Yeah.
Ultimately, we have to just enjoy the steps, enjoy whatever it is. I think we become very monofocal. It's like there's a goal, we've got a destination in mind, and having worked with highly successful, very wealthy people, I've personally been able to borrow from their personal experience and realise, well, none of that stuff ever brings lasting fulfillment. You know, if there's no self-love, if there's no appreciation of the process of life and living, then it doesn't matter where you get to, you'll still feel like you haven't arrived or you haven't done enough. So I think the ultimate thing is just to simplify your whole life and your whole kind of goal, which should be to get deeper into the now. And if when the now becomes the focus and becomes the goal, then, you know, life just takes care of itself. You know, life knows how to evolve and progress. It's just take care of the moments, and everything else takes care of itself.
And what are some things that that you do on the reg every day? Are there some things you do every day to bring yourself back to that awareness?
Yeah, the thing that I think, you know, and this was something that I learned from an Indigenous elder, which is really connect with country. And it's something that I've started to do more and more and more. And, you know, within the Vedic tradition, there's an expression that says, what you find in the Veda, you find everywhere. What you don't find in the Veda, you find nowhere. So within the Vedic understanding, this teaching has existed, but it was never really imparted to me in its fullness. And I think within all spiritual traditions, over time, certain teachings are glorified and certain teachings are, they just kind of go into the closet and they're forgotten. So I think what we need to do most in this culture, and this is the cognition that I've been having constantly for the past year or so, is just how deeply in need the earth is of human love and understanding. Like the way that we're treating the planet, it's a disaster. We're in deep trouble. You know, scientists say we're entering the 6th mass extinction as a species, and no one's paying attention to it. And basically it's because we've separated ourselves from the energy of the earth. When you look at all indigenous cultures, they were at one with the frequency of the earth. They're at one with the intelligence of the earth. As Xavier Rudd, you know, once mentioned to me, he said, you know, the sacred, powerful, mystical, spiritual intelligence of the earth moves through everyone, but we can cut it off. And so the indigenous cultures, they were at one with that wisdom, and they were living that wisdom, and every day they saw themselves as being responsible for supporting nature in its ability to stay balanced. And I think the balance has really been lost. And so, you know, this Indigenous man has been teaching me how to connect with country, how to tap into the wisdom of the earth and, you know, be grounded. And he said, I don't care how spiritually evolved someone is. He said, I care how grounded they are. You know, where they're grounded. And you look at this man, his name is Jambe, he's like the earth with legs. Incredible, like the energy that comes off this man. And so for me, I guess early on in my development, it was all about transcending and awakening to that transcendental value to life, that which is beyond the physical. But now I'm really waking up to the sacredness of the physical. So I went to spirit and now I'm coming back to matter. and realizing the sacredness that exists in matter. So I guess that's the integration of those two worlds, really, the ethereal, the transcendental, the spiritual with the real, tangible, physical reality. You know, and the earth has consciousness, she has wisdom. And I think that's just the deep journey I'm on now, is connecting with that more and more and more. And that's my daily practice now, which is coming one with the spirit of the earth. Because we're all children of the earth, we're all indigenous. But we've just forgotten that. It's so stupid. We think of these ancient cultures, and they were able to live sustainably on the planet for hundreds of thousands of years, and we've just really screwed it up massively in a few thousand. You know, it's abominable. And so I think human beings have got to wake up and realize the earth's our home, she's our mother, and we're here. And one of my favorite expressions, which comes from the North American Indians, was basically that we don't inherit the earth from our ancestors, we borrow it from our children. And that's the way I think now. You know, I'm going to be here for a short time. I want generations to come to still be able to enjoy this place in its purity. And human beings, we can destroy the earth, or we can actually take it to a whole new place.
And you think we've got the ability, after the destruction that is occurring or has been occurring for hundreds of years, do you think we've still got that ability and that innate sense of capability that it's going to happen?
Yeah, the earth can heal, and human beings can wake up and are waking up en masse. But I think it's going to take shockwaves to do it. It's going to take, you know, the threat of mass extinction, the threat of annihilation, or even evidence or that being exhibited where, you know, people are really, you know, sea levels are rising. You know, I heard one figure that it's expected to rise 15 meters in the next 100 years. Like, that does, where we're sitting right now is gone. You know, and large parts of the earth mass are gone. And it seems that people only do something at the 11th hour and the 59th minute. I really, you know, that makes me sad.
Totally.
That we can't just see the obvious. So, you know, I'm hopeful, and I think we will. The earth knows what it's doing, and cosmic intelligence knows what it's doing. And this is a game playing out. And I think the darkness is an opportunity, or it's an invitation to the light. So these threats are good because they're going to wake people up out of their torpor and their kind of being distracted by all this, you know, the glitter and glamour of life. Realizing, you know, when I was walking through this national park the other day with Jambe, I said, how do you feel when you're in this place? What does it do for you? He said, real. You know, he said, I'm just all about keeping it real. So the coolest thing for me is to sit under a tree, you know, look at nature and how she works, and just, for me, that's the most beautiful thing. Like, I was talking to someone the other day, I said, I get such a kick out of a tree. It's just, it teaches me so much. It's got these deep roots into this hidden domain, and it communicates with other trees through the fungi that are in the soil. It's trading carbon through that network. It can communicate with pheromones through all the other trees. Creates habitat. You know, its system is so magnificent. It's constantly renewing itself. And a tree grows from like a seed, and it gets to a certain height and goes, this is beautiful, this is enough. Let's just enjoy this. Whereas the human species go, let's build something. Oh, that's not enough. Let's keep growing, going, going, going. And no height is ever enough. And we've got to learn from nature. Yeah.
It seems you're talking about Indigenous Australian culture and wisdom. You've obviously got a huge background and knowledge of the Vedic traditions. You mentioned shamanism as well. I see a common thread of incredible wisdom that's now being more recognised slowly and validated through, which has been backed up by science. Do you see do you see that as all as the one truth, just accessed through different languages?
Exactly. He said, you know, there was a great yogi in India. His name was, and it's been echoed through many, many different people. His name was Tatwala Baba, and he said, God is one, it's only man that makes him different. You know, so we tend to glorify certain aspects of God, and we think God is only like this, and realize God is the all. And certain cultures, if you grow up in a forest, then that becomes the mythos, you know, it'll play out inside of that. And if you go up in the desert, it'll be a completely different mythos and a completely different appreciation of the Creator and the expression of the Creator. So, you know, truth is one. It just goes by many different names. And I think shamanism especially, well, shamanism as it's popularly known is more earth-based. Vedic tradition is more beyond. It's into full realization of the self and that pure spirit as being one. But it seems they're just different paths, and these paths often end up in the exact same place, but just the methodology is different. And some of these, they fall short too. Some of these traditions fall very short of fulfilling, you know, the fulfillment, the spiritual potential of a person. So I've kind of gathered different teachings and lessons, and I find they're all harmonious, because remember, what's in the Veda is everywhere, and what's not in the Veda is nowhere. So, you know, that is a complete system of knowledge. And I'm always just like so encouraged when I see it in shamanism, when I see it in an indigenous culture, when I see it in someone who's living off in some far European, you know, settlement, cognizing the Veda, because everyone can. It's at the source of our being. It's just we just need to be that hollow reed so that wisdom can come through and be realized.
Do you think there's an important place to start, whether it's with the physical, whether it's with the consciousness?
I think a very natural thing for people to do is start on the outer layer, and then they peel back the onion. You know, they'll start with getting their body into shape, maybe changing their diet a bit, and then doing some physical exercise, and maybe doing some yoga, and maybe realizing that, well, the breath's quite a thing to work with too. And so that's kind of where I started. I started with the physical and I went inward. Some people just start on the inner plane, and then they kind of realize, oh, my body's dragging behind a bit, and they have to work that level. So everyone has a sort of path that's right for them. I think, you know, we can't ignore the inner. Ultimately, it all comes to that. You know, if we're exclusively working on the outer layer and that alone, we're missing something. So the inner must be, you can't exclude the inner. You can forget the outer and still get full realization, but the inner can't be ignored. But I think we have to think globally or holistically. And that's why in my own personal journey, I was, you know, experiencing very deep realization, but I noticed, man, I know nothing about my digestive system. I can't tell you where my pancreas is or what it does, and what the colon is, or what its function is, or what the microbiology is, or I was completely clueless. You know, this miracle I was living inside, I knew nothing about. And so that's when I really start my journey, you know, a couple of years after learning to meditate, to really tapping into the wisdom of Ayurveda. And then I find these two things are just so supportive. Understanding the body and understanding spirit, and letting them kind of be supported in whatever they need to be.
And complement each other as well.
Yeah. You know, if the body's shut, consciousness can't evolve.
It'd be hard, yeah.
It's like if you've got digestive problems, or you got insomnia, or you know, your microbiology is compromised, it's going to be difficult for this to be like the vehicle, the pure vehicle it can be. And the yogis have always had a tradition of purifying the physiology, and do all these cleanses and all these things to get toxicity out of the body, so the channels, all the shrotas and all the nadis can be open, so Kundalini can move through completely unobstructed.
And as far as specifically more meditation, what are some things that one would gain as far from meditation itself?
Well, I love what the Buddha said. You know, someone said, what did you gain from meditation? And he said, nothing. But I lost my fear of death, I lost my anxiety, I lost my stress. So what people gain, I guess, is what they lose initially. People lose their, you know, their obsessive mind, they lose their worry, they lose their stress, they lose their anxiety, they lose their insomnia, they lose their hyper-reactivity, and they lose their tension. So there's kind of a softening to one's being. And then you start to notice all your mental faculties improve from meditating, because you're taking it from a contracted state into this coherent state. And that enriches the mind. It's like watering a plant. So it starts to thrive. And the benefits people gain, I think the amplification of one's goodness, their good qualities and their strengths, they get amplified. And things which are really an interference, they start to become less and less a part of the landscape. And for everyone, it happens at different speeds. Sometimes it's like overnight, just a shift, whole new world. And for other people, it might take weeks or months or even years. But people with this practice get benefit immediately.
Cool.
Yeah.
I remember when you taught me to meditate for the first few months, I was like, oh my God, life is just harder now that I know how to meditate. It's like, but what it ended up being was that I had a heightened state of awareness that I realized at what a radical pace I was moving and how much anxiety and how much turmoil was inside me. Can you tell me about the first time, or one of the first times that you felt a bit more connected, or any change in you?
For me, it was like my first session of meditating. I just went somewhere. I transcended so deeply, like, wow, I've been waiting for this my whole life. So I got it first session, and then I was hooked. So that was just the taste, and then it just developed after that. Like, it kept blossoming, and I think for about 12 months I was just in a state of bliss.
Wow.
And then I kind of had a break, and the waters sort of got a bit tumultuous, and then I advanced my practice, and then I went even into a deeper state of bliss, and it just kind of went like that. I was very lucky. But some people, they get the rocky road like you got. And
well, that didn't last that was just the first side effect, and then smoothness. I think you ironed my psyche out a little bit, and then it got better and better.
And I think the light goes on, you realize, oh my God, there's this kind of this way I've been living and operating for so long, and I'm so habituated to who I am, and you never get that perspective. So you got that perspective, being able to really be the witness to the workings of your life. Another thing can happen, which I probably shouldn't mention because it can be discouraging for people, but meditation's an accelerant. It accelerates one's spiritual progress. And so this force comes to really elevate you, and often you work through your karma very quicker than you would normally. So say, someone was going to work through their karma for 12 months, without meditation, you can accelerate through that. And that could be like, I was chatting to a friend of mine the other day, Ido Khan, and he's got a guru in India who he works with, and a friend of his was saying, it's such a mistake to think that you come under the grace of a guru and your life's just going to become wonderfully sweet and miraculously frictionless. He said, it's not that at all, it's worse. He's like, yeah, well, a guru has one thing in mind, your spiritual evolution, your salvation, and all the stuff that's getting in the way, wants you to work through that as quickly as possible. So sometimes the spiritual path can be a bit rocky. Better to have rocks, I reckon, than to just have a life of suffering and misery and limitation, So if something needs to be worked through, better to do that work now so you can enjoy the sweet ride, get over the turbulence and get the high ride.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Amen. I love that. And so was there anything in particular that led you onto this path to, I suppose we spoke about at the start, to serve or just to be the light for a lot of people? Was there something in particular that made you want to do this?
I think I always had a sense as a kid that I was here to do some special work. And I was always a very deep thinker, and even my mum at a very young age, she detected that I was a very old soul, and that's since been confirmed by astrologers and things like that. So I knew I was here for a deeper purpose than just sort of doing what a lot of society does, which is just I want to build a home and retire and get stuff. And I was on a spiritual quest, but I was so alone. I didn't have a teacher of any kind, and I remember getting to a point where realizing I don't know where else to go. I've gotten as far as I can as an individual, and I'm just kind of lost. And that was maybe when I was 7 or so. And I was trying to understand the nature of reality, and it kind of scared me because I didn't know what was beyond the physical form and where we went when we departed from our physical bodies and where we came from. And I was contemplating those questions, but I got a bit scared, and so I parked my spirituality. But then my mum had this beautiful partner, and he became my stepfather, and then he kind of got me back into that, and we began playing with energy, and he taught me how to sort of read minds and do these sorts of great things as a kid. And so I really explored it again, and then I think I departed and went into riding bikes and playing soccer and doing all that.
Being a kid.
And then I got to a point in my life where I just needed that again, so I began reading all the spiritual texts, and I just felt so in love with the knowledge, but I realized there's a big gap between the knowledge and one experiencing the truth. So I thought, okay, I can read this stuff, but inside I'm not feeling very different. In fact, I'm feeling worse because I know what's possible, but I can't taste the fruit. You're telling me all about this fruit and how sweet it is, but I don't taste it. And it was at that point that it dawned on me I needed to learn a spiritual practice, and I needed to learn to meditate, but I didn't know where to begin, so I just didn't do anything. And then kookaburras. Then I think I started to suffer. Some stuff happened in my life and I just got very stressed out. And I thought, life sucks right now and it's not meant to. And I realized life was meant to be rich and beautiful, but my experience was the opposite. So my life was going into the toilet basically. And I thought, how do I turn this around? And everything I was reading at the time and everything that was coming out at me was saying, you need to learn to meditate. And then I was fortunate enough to meet my guru, Tom Knowles, and my life from that moment became a new life. I became part of a very deep, rich tradition, and I found a guru that I'd always dreamed of finding. And I thought I'd have to go to India and give up my life and, devote myself to some teacher in a faraway hill, and here I was in Sydney finding this great master. And, he's been with me ever since. Yeah.
How important do you think it is to have mentors?
Well, some people can get there without them, but they're very few. I think they're generally the exception. I believe everyone needs a teacher. I think we benefit enormously from having a teacher, and we can advance much further or faster with a teacher. If someone had to, come up with a way to communicate with someone on the other side of the world, they could certainly, come up with the information technology we have, but they can just talk to someone immediately, and then a whole other teaching can unfold. So I think we borrow from these very ancient teachings and these traditions because they're there to hasten our progress. And someone who's walked that path and has self-realized can really, or begun the process of self-realization, can be of great support to others. So I think, we're so invested and immersed in ourselves and our mind patterns that we can't see them anymore. Whereas you go in front of a mentor or a teacher or a healer or whatever it may be, they're just going to go, you notice you're doing this thing? They'll be like, really? Holy crap, you're right, and that's totally been ruining my life, thank you. I didn't even notice I was doing that. So, a guru is in many ways there to break you down and to remove your ignorance and remove all the ways you're limiting yourself. And it's very hard to see that initially. Once you evolve to a certain place, it's much easier to see that. Like you did within days, you're like, oh my God, I can see all these things that I'm doing which I really should cease doing. So I think a guru is essential. And we come from, it's known as a guru shishya parampara, which basically means a teacher-student lineage. And it's a parampara. Param means like beyond or supreme, and para means beyond. So it's basically beyond the beyond. So this is a tradition which goes on, has come from the beyond, and is passed down through these human beings which can unite them with the beyond. So it's said within our tradition, a guru is a vital player in all of that. It's very, very difficult to just do what Eckhart Tolle did, which was just wake up enlightened one day. It's very, very few people actually have that experience. Most people need to do the work and progress, and rather than just suddenly arriving, spontaneously getting enlightened. It'd be nice to have it that way, but it doesn't always happen.
No. Maybe you'll have a bit more appreciation for it when you do the hard yards.
Yeah, it's true. And he worked for his enlightenment in his last life. He got so close, dropped his body, and in this life didn't really have to do anything. But he had to put in a lot of effort in one of his incarnations.
And he was on the street before he became enlightened anyway, wasn't he?
Well, he was enlightened on the streets.
Okay.
He didn't know what he was doing. Like, he was moving around in this state, witnessing himself, thinking he's losing his mind, until he realized, no, that's actually the goal.
That's normal.
What all these masters are talking about.
Yeah, right.
Being in consciousness and noticing your mind and personality and body.
Anybody along the realm from a a young kid, a 7-year-old who's really inquisitive, to a 70-year-old who wants to learn to, maybe it's to better themselves or to better the world, where would you suggest that they start?
With that, that's it. That's what Maharishi said. He was interviewed on Larry King Live, last television interview we did. Larry King said, Maharishi, what does it take for people to evolve? You know, you've been teaching meditation for so long and this and that, and he said, one thing, just the intention. That's it.
Yeah.
We call that a sankalpa in Sanskrit. And it's said to be like the seed which germinates. You know, it's that which manifests the reality. So everything starts with an intention, just to have a better life. It all begins there. You know, because someone could just find, you know, their wife meditates and then they meditate, but if they didn't have the intention to improve their life, the meditation would just kind of find its way into the cupboard. You know, so someone's got to really want something in order to find that thing gravitating to them, or to get benefit or change. You have to want change.
Cool.
It all starts there, just wanting change.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Well, I'm very grateful to have this chat with you. So thanks for your time, and
No worries, bro.
thanks for being you.
Thanks for being you. Yeah, you're a bright light too.
Awesome. Thanks, Gary.
Yeah, thanks, mate. Thanks, mate.